My name is David Fletcher. I am the founder of Wimbletech Community Interest Company, which has been going about 4 years. So a community interest company is something that exists to create value for the community that it exists within. So that's me. I'm the founder of that organisation. Why does it matter? Well, it really matters because I think that increasingly, especially faced with kind of the economy that we're in now with cuts and lots of changes, I think it's important for socially minded entrepreneurs to find creative ways to add value to the spaces they live in. And they can't do it alone, so I think it's really important that they find a way to bring others together to help solve problems that we all face. The moment I decided something needed to change was when I was in the coffee shop. I was trying to run my business, there was babies screaming, I didn't have access to PowerPoint, and I needed a better place to grow my business. Now, I could have gone to San Francisco, which at the time was a hot spot for growing startups, or I could have gone to Shoreditch, which also had this kind of growing ecosystem of entrepreneurs and startups, so like-minded people. The problem with that was I really loved where I lived. So I loved Wimbledon. I was living 10 minutes up Wimbledon Hill on the way in between Wimbledon and Wimbledon Village, and I decided I needed something else. And I looked, and I couldn't find it, so I needed to create it. So I shut my laptop, I put my coffee down, I left the coffee shop, and I marched into every pub, club, bar, and space and venue within the area that might have something for me, that might have a good space that I could create something in. And I walked into Wimbledon Library. So in Wimbledon Library, I don't know if you know it, but it's a cracking library, so if you've not been there, you should definitely visit. Wimbledon Library is very close to Wimbledon Main Line Station, and it's also very close to the coffee shops, and it's very big. So when I walked in there, I went for a little bit of an exploration. I went upstairs, and upstairs they had a meeting room, but this meeting room was empty. And I'd been in the library before, and I'd never really seen a lot going on in this space, and I was very aware that libraries, they're under a lot of pressure at the moment, and they're under pressure for a few different reasons. One, they need income. Two, they need footfall. And three, they need to increasingly remain relevant and have relevance that's outside of or beyond the book. Because people, they're not reading less, but what they demand from a space or from a space of that size is maybe different. Maybe they need other things. So the library needs to deliver that. So I walked in, I went upstairs, saw the space, and I said to the library manager at the time, how much to rent your room upstairs? And she said, well, basically it's the day rate times 30. So I said, whoa, that's really, really expensive. Let me ask you a different question. How much are you getting for that space right now? And she said, nothing. That to me was a moment that changed a lot of things, because suddenly we've got a situation where I knew there were people like me who might be able to benefit from having a space that could club together and afford to pay the space, but I also knew that we could probably contribute to that space, that environment, that building, that library, by giving back with free events and sharing some of our knowledge. So where are we now, 4 years on, from starting with one desk in an empty meeting room in Wimbledon Library? We now have 9 sites. We're opening more sites. We've created over £250,000 in income, sustainable income for libraries and councils that is going up every single day. We've created close to 300 jobs in local communities. We've generated local spending of approximately £1.5 million for the local economy, where people are staying locally, not travelling into the city, and they're having their tea and their coffee in their community. So putting money back into the tills of the local shops, which is a good thing. We've done probably about between 600 and 700 events, and those events are a combination of work and life, and they're a combination of member and community events. And we continue to try and do more with new programs that we're trying to develop over the coming 6 to 12 months. I really remember my mum having a very positive, and still does have a very positive effect on everybody she's around, and that's because she gives more than she takes. My dad, the same. When he set up his business, he created something that was valuable that others could benefit from. Many people employed, creating a difference. And my nan, she set up the first playgroup in the UK, and when I was growing up, she brought myself up, my brother, my cousins, and it was always about be honest, work hard, be transparent, give more than you take, play for others. And those values are something that I would like to think They came through in some of my corporate positions, but I was never really able to truly kind of accelerate and make the most of those values that I had learned. This project was an opportunity to do that. So underneath this project, we've got a philosophy which is together we're stronger and the power is the network. And I firmly believe in those two things, and it's highlighted even in the model. So that first room I couldn't afford on my own, but by getting 20 people together, we could afford to pay for that space every month, helping the library and creating income. We could also work together to give free events to the people that visited the library, and that was again about going beyond, which is probably, if you look at what's Powers Network Together We're Stronger, and the third leg of that kind of triage of the value system, going beyond for others is a wrap up in a sentence of everything that I learned. And we go beyond for each other as a team. We go beyond for our members by providing free tea, free coffee, the most affordable spaces in town, by creating an amazing community, a home for startups that they can feel that they're attached to. We get that by going beyond. So who we are dreamers, we are fire starters, we are rainmakers, we are passionistas, we are not afraid to fail. That's kind of who we are. That's who we are as a team, and that's also reflected in the members that we have. And through embodying those beliefs, we can create a huge change and huge impact in our own lives, in our own team, in the project, but most importantly in the communities that we operate within. So our biggest challenge, there's probably two really big challenges that we faced in the beginning. Firstly, so we had a space and we had the vision, which was to create a community of like-minded people. We're going into spaces to begin with usually that are underutilised. So the meeting room that we had to begin with. No access to toilets, no access to a kitchen, so we created a hot urn. We put some free bananas and biscuits down and things, which meant that some of the homeless people would come in because we had no locks on the door and they'd help themselves, which was okay. That's a challenge. Access. How do people get in? We have to wait till the library opens. When the promise is a community and a space within which they can grow their business, that doesn't exist in the beginning. And we have to create that. And the only way we can create that is to go beyond, to go outside of our skill sets and do a bit of decorating, but also to build on the relationship we have with our partners, the council, the library staff. And change is not always easy. So you've got that, they've got to understand the vision and they've got to believe in it, and it's got to be compelling and inspiring for them. Now the second that works, and you've got member number 1, which gets you member number 2, and you've got library manager number 1, and you've got library member staff number 1, number 2, and they get it because they can see the value you're creating. It's very, very visible. Then you can build momentum, and then you can go from 5 members to 10, to 20, to 50, to 100, to 200, to 500, and our next challenge is to go to 1,000, 5,000, 50,000, which I believe we'll do with new programs, but they're the two challenges. Do they still exist right now, today? So if we open a new space, absolutely. We start always with member number 1. That's the first person who listens to, goes on a tour, sees a space that isn't perfect, and they have to say, I believe that these guys, this team, will deliver that community within that space that currently doesn't have great access and maybe looks a bit grotty because it's not being used. But if you can do that and you can do it well, you can open site number 2. So what do I like to do as a founder? There's nothing that I enjoy more than walking into any of our sites, especially those that have got a few people in them, and seeing it, seeing that it's real. You can walk in, especially when we've got the locks and we've got our branding and the marketing and the space looks amazing. You can see it and you can speak to members and you can feel it. A new member who had just joined Wimbletech came up to me and said, and I really struggled before I joined, and I struggled because I've gone through some challenges personally, but now I found a community and it's changed my life. When you hear somebody say something like that, as a result of the project that you started and that your team are now delivering, that's everything. You've given more than you take, and you've created something that is truly valuable. And I don't just hear that once or twice. And what was interesting was he said, so which site are you a member of? And which room do you work in? And I said, oh, so I kind of work in all of them. I'm the founder. And he said, Jesus, that could have gone really wrong. I said, I'm glad it didn't, but I love the honest feedback, and it's great to have you on board. So that's really special from a founder point of view. Anybody who's an entrepreneur knows that the journey is typified by peaks and troughs, up and down, and it's hard. And you need to be resilient because it doesn't always work. Something that I found unbelievably rewarding was to finally be able to show my family, look, this has worked. You can see it, you can feel it. So and they've seen me go through times where it didn't always work. But now when they come up, and my mum visited Wimbletech, and she walked through the space, and she bumped into a member, and I introduced my mum and said, hey, here's my mum. And he said, you should be very proud of your son. Kind of tap on the back. It's gold, absolute gold. So kind of David the founder and David Fletcher individual, the reason for me choosing a path that was entrepreneurship was about having the assimilation of those two things being one and the same. So your work and your life is an extension of who you are. And again, that's something that I really believe is you should always try and seek those things out that you truly believe in and that are true to yourself, and then become as good as you can be at that. And for me, everybody can do it their way, and you can find that space, your little spot in the world where you create the most value, doing something that you're really good at. I think then that should be your work life and your personal life become one and the same, because it's an extension of who you are. And that's what I believe with this project. It's a manifestation of everything that my family's taught me, of all the values, and I'd rather not be doing anything else. Stories the world over are used to help others to learn, to grow, and it's how we kind of pass things on and we share emotion and understanding. So when we had a new member of the team who came in and said that she had an idea to do just that within and across the members of Wimbletech, the library staff and our communities, we couldn't wait for her to get started. So an example of a story from Wimbletech was a member who actually was sat across the table from me almost in Starbucks when I first began the project. And he came into Wimbletech. I showed him the first room and I talked about the community and the space and the campus. And he said, you haven't got that yet. And he was right, we didn't. Anyway, fast forward 6 months on, we had grown from 1 member to 30 to 50 to 60, and we just opened up a new space. I invited him back in, and he came back in and he saw the space and he said, you're ready for me now. You have a campus. So he joined, and within 3 months of joining, 3 to 6 months of joining, he went on to raise £2 million, hired 15 people, and then grew out of the space. So he grew out, and we worked with the council to try and find a place that was local that he could develop and grow his business. And he said, in fact, he found it, but it was just down the road. And he's employed, I think, about 20, 25 people now who are all living and working in the area. Now he's moved on, but part of his story, part of his energy, part of his growth, part of his learnings, they're still in the project. And he's now a member of the alumni. So if we need someone to talk about how to actually do it, he's done it. And that's the power of stories. And that's one example. And if you look across our membership, which is currently 500, and you roll that back over the last 4 years, what you've got is thousands of individuals on 1,000 different journeys. And now we need to capture some of those stories and the emotion so that we can share it with you guys.